Oh, well, let's sell it anyway.
Hot diggity dog, we've got it, Mr. Simpson. Mr. Simpson?
One hot dog, please.
Apu from Simpsons. Now, I know there are a lot of people, including a lot of Indians, who think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with Apu. If you ignore, if you overlook his exaggerated accent, he's pretty much living the American dream. If you're one of those people, I urge you to stay with me till the end of this segment at least.
Right away, they were like, can you do an Indian voice and how offensive can you make it, basically?
Really?
I would immediately begin to talk this way. And I was like, it's not tremendously accurate. It's a little stereotype. I'm like, that's all right.
So when I was doing my research for this video, I came across this documentary by this Indian-American comedian Hari Bolu. This documentary is called The Problem with Apu, I think. And I watched it because I felt obliged to watch it if I was making a video about this. In that documentary, there's this moment where Hari shows his mother few clips of Apu.
Are you sure you want a child, Apu?
You know I do.
I mean, there comes a time in a man's life when he...
So that's you guys. When you see that character, do either of you identify with that character in any way?
No, I don't think so.
Does it bother you at all that it's a white actor that does the voice of Apu?
Hank Azaria is a talented guy. They paid him, he did it. And he did it good.
Why do you think you tolerate this kind of stuff more than we would?
First of all, we came here. We have to succeed no matter what. It doesn't mean that we are not offended by it.
Why do you feel like we don't tolerate it?
Times have changed. You have security and you belong here. You're an American.
And in that moment, I realized the difference in attitude towards everything in life between a first-generation Indian American rather, and the second or third generation Indian Americans. And this applies to other countries too, not just America. Indians in Australia, UK, or pretty much any part of the West. So do you agree with Hari's mother that somebody got paid to do it and they just did it and there's no need to hold any grudge? I'm paraphrasing, she didn't exactly say these words, but that was basically the gist of it. Do you agree? I think I would agree if it were true, but that's not the case. That's not how Apu came into existence. Apu wasn't conceived in a writer's room. One day, there was a table read, and some of the writers actually came up with this character, this convenience store owner. So these people were very clear. These writers were very clear that this character is not Indian, let alone somebody who has a very thick Indian accent.
Apu, he was not intended to be a character. He was called Clerk. He had one line, 35 cents, please. And I wrote in the script, he is not an Indian. Because I said, that is a comedy cliche.
I see, yeah.
And we get to the table reading, and Hank Azaria goes, 35 cents, please. And I got this giant laugh, and suddenly Apu was an Indian.
And one of the producers, in Hank's own words, leans forward and asks him to be even more offensive. So the goal of Apu was to be offensive. Now what do you say? So you must be wondering, okay, Hank thought maybe this would be funny and he did it. But no, there's a backstory to this too.
Most of the 7-Eleven guys were Indian or Pakistani, and there was one in particular who lived near me who was pretty crusty. And I would often have the same exchange with him all the time. I would be online, buying a drink, and I'd open the Gatorade before I'm waiting to pay, and he would get annoyed. Why do you open? You haven't paid for it yet. Please don't open until you have paid. Like, am I running out the store? What am I doing?
Now I know some of you would say, why did this guy assume that Hank was not gonna pay? Alright, that seems fair. But then Hank clapped back by saying, I wasn't gonna run away. So that should have been the end of it, right? It should have been. But it wasn't. For some reason, this experience stayed with Hank long enough for him to create this weirdly obnoxious character of Apu. So no, nobody paid Hank to do this. He created that thing by himself. And when he faced backlash, he apologized. He said he was embarrassed by what he's done. And I want to believe that. But when Hari got in touch with him, trying to get his side of the story for his documentary, The Problem with Apu, he declined. I mean, he used the corporate language to be nice, but Essentially, he said he asked Hari to fuck off, in a corporate language, if you will. So, I don't know, man. He wishes Hari luck for his endeavor, and he says he hopes Hari achieves whatever he's set out to achieve. But he also says, having said that, and I quote, having said that, I cannot be a part of your documentary because then I'll be at the mercy of your edits. Now that's a masterclass in dodging accountability. And after this stunt, he faced even more backlash. And then he goes even crazier. He says, he's so embarrassed that he actually wants to meet each and every Indian in the US and apologize to them personally. Now that's not even possible, so why say that? I'll tell you why he said that. Because he had no intention to apologize. Because if he had these intentions, he would have sat down with Harikonda Bolu and had a conversation. But he chose not to do that. He had a chance to do it. He chose not to do it. The Simpsons too, they had a chance to make amends. And even they chose not to do it. Because years later, Apu gets a nephew. This time played by an Indian dude, Utkarsh Ambudkar. So that's a win. Now we gotta count our wins, we gotta count our blessings, for real. Because there's so few of them. And Utkarsh doesn't have, this nephew, Apu's nephew, doesn't have an accent. He is as American gets. In fact, in one episode, Apu's nephew calls out Apu as a caricature, as a stereotype, as a bad impression of an Indian dude by a white guy. That's what Apu was, essentially.
You're my uncle, bruh, and I love you, but you're a stereotype, man. Take a penny, leave a penny. I'm Indian. I do yoga.
And in that moment, Utkarsh himself half expected that the scene would cut in that precise moment and shift to a recording booth where Hank Azaria is recording his Apu impression. That could have been it. No need for an apology, just a tongue-in-cheek way to say that we get what you're saying, but, this was what was happening behind the scenes. But they didn't do that. Instead, they doubled down. In this very scene, they introduce, an Italian chef comes out of the kitchen. Typical stereotype. What are you doing? That kind of shit.
Stereotype? Who's a stereotype? That's a spicy accusation.
You pipe it down.
And that was a backhanded way of asking us to shut the fuck up. Because we make fun of everybody. You're no exception to this. Now, I would agree to that and I'd laugh at that too. But the thing is, Italians have had better representation. The Godfather, The Sopranos, Joey from Friends. Nobody's doing Vito Corleone's impression to mock an Italian. Yeah? But what somebody's trying to do when they do an Apu impression. You know the intention, right? But that's not the case with Italians. Even if somebody does a Joey impression, it's not to offend them. Maybe somebody would do to raise up a girl, but that's about it. The question isn't if Apu is funny or not. He might as well be the funniest character somebody's ever seen in their lives. But we also have to see what this portrayal has done to young Indian boys and girls growing up in the States. How this accent was thrown back at them in playgrounds, in classrooms, in cafeterias, in offices, made to feel less, the butt of the joke. That is my issue with Apu. So I urge you to watch this documentary, The Problem with Apu by Harikonda Bolu. Because in this documentary, you'll see a lot of second-gen and third-gen Americans express their grievances, especially when it comes to Apu. These kind of things have real-life consequences, Maybe this is why Indian kids second-guess themselves, despite knowing that they're right. And I really want to believe Hank Azaria that he's sorry, he's embarrassed. But then again, you gotta put in some effort, right? Just saying that I just want to apologize to every single Indian in the US, it's almost like a mockery, because that's not even possible. Now, a lot of people are dismissive of The Simpsons. They say that it's a cartoon, it's a literal caricature. What were you expecting? And others say that The Simpsons make fun of everybody. We are no exception to that. Okay, so what about Raj? Rajesh Kutrapali from the Big Bang Theory. Is he a caricature too? I mean, it's not a cartoon, that's for sure. Okay, it's a show about nerds, but why is Raj the only one without a girl? Among all the four leads, Raj doesn't have a girl. Have you noticed that? Leonard gets Penny and later gets Priya. Howard gets Bernadette. Even Sheldon gets Amy. A lot of people claim that Sheldon is a bigger nerd. But even he gets a girl. But not Raj. Oh, Raj doesn't need a girl because he's awesome as he is. Or is it because Raj is so shy that he actually needs alcohol to talk to women?
So, you guys work with Leonard and Sheldon at the university? I'm sorry, do you speak English?
He was never the cool one. He was never the desirable one. He was never the guy who entered a room and commanded it. I'll tell you exactly why Raj exists. Because a lot of Indian people had a lot of hopes with Raj. Because with Apu, he was a side character. He was a comic relief. He wasn't the main character. Now we get a main character, somebody who sits at the table. Only one tiny caveat though. He has to be less human. His role is to be so pathetic that the other three leads look better in comparison. That is why he exists. His accent was a punchline. His heritage was a punchline. His parents were a punchline. His entire cultural identity was reduced to awkwardness, insinuating that he's still a virgin, and of course, curry jokes. Curry jokes. We watched and we laughed. Because what else can we do? Somebody got paid to do that. But also notice that Raj has a sister, Priya, who is a polar opposite. She's sophisticated, she's desirable, she doesn't even have the accent, she gets our main guy Leonard, she makes Penny feel jealous. She's somebody whom you want to root for. Not too Indian to be off-putting, but just enough Indian to be exotic enough to be sexy. Note that she's from the same family, same heritage, same gene pool as Raj, but entirely different somehow. Oh, there's a reason for that. She's well-traveled. She studied in the UK. That's why she doesn't have the accent. But who decided that? This is Raj. Awkward, weird, lonely, more Indian. And this is Priya. She's outgoing, she's funny, she's attractive, and less Indian. Was there a need for her to be so different from her brother? I don't think so.
This stuff is horrible. You want to see if we can find the cafeteria and get real coffee?
Sure. We're going to the cafeteria to get some coffee. You want anything?
I'm fine.
Because it's the rule. The Indian man has to be neutered. He has to be socially awkward. He has to be sexually invisible. He has to be the butt of the joke. And the Indian woman, she has to be exotic. Just enough Indian. Not more, not less. Both are being reduced, just in different directions. And the actor who played Raj, Kunal, he's nothing like Raj. He's charming, he's attractive, he's funny. He still has the accent, but it's no longer goofy now, is it? Oh, you're such a nitpicker. There's so many people who love Raj. So many women. So many white women. Here's the thing. Nobody loves Raj. Raj is funny. Okay, that's where it stops. These women, they like Kunal. They're a fan of Kunal. They're not a fan of Raj. Kunal will get a second date. Raj will not. Now, some people will say, it doesn't matter. The character is not perfect. But at least it's played by an Indian. Yeah. But who wrote this character? Who decided that this scientist is gonna be an incel pretty much? Somebody who's scared of women. Somebody who makes the other leads look better in comparison. And who decided that his accent is gonna be like that? And who decided that his sister is not gonna have that accent at all? Same question as Apu, but in a different decade. The same writer's room with the same answer. You see, it was never about one character. It was never about one show. It was about a template. Indians, they are a template. I can guarantee you that the person who's watching this video on the other side looks entirely different than what I look like. If we stood next to each other, nobody can guess that we come from the same place. Apu created the mold, Raj shaped it, and Hollywood kept using it. Why? Because it worked. Everybody laughed. But at whose expense? Laughs means viewership. Viewership means more money. And that's the bottom line.
Hey, now before you leave, can you just drop a like and leave a comment? So that's gonna help my channel grow a bit. It's gonna help with the algorithm and stuff. I'd really appreciate it if you did that.